Hey Sam, welcome to the Task Podcast. How you doing?
Hey, it's an honor, Matt. I'm glad to be on the other side of the table, so to speak.
Yeah, it's I'm glad to return the favor. We were obviously on your show, I think about a week ago actually. So nice to be able to return the favor. However, I have to say I get off lightly because the audience hearing the recording with you. We did the live one, and yeah, pretty cool. You do those live shows pretty much all the time. Hey, when you're out there, you putting yourself on the line with live shows. Every time.
Yeah, I guess ignorance is bliss. I didn't really think about the risks of doing a live show, but it's been fun. I think I started doing it more to excite myself. The spontaneity of it has been great, and the feedback from the community has been awesome as well when they see the timer kind of pop up there. So it's been fun to do. It's been real fun to do.
Yeah, well, it's cool. It's definitely more, I imagine, more nerve-wracking, but also, I think that in line with what we're talking about today, transparency. I mean, it's fully transparent when you're going live. There's no fiddling with the content. There's no playing around with what goes out there. So yeah, good on you. Look, I would have done a short intro, but in terms of just a start, it'd be great just to get a bit of background. Your history and why you find yourself in this place as this. I suppose kind of leading voice in the Stellar community.
Well, I mean, first of all, I mean it's humbling to be in the spot to really help I guess expose the Stellar blockchain. My background is being an entrepreneur. My parents immigrated to the United States from the Caribbean islands, Trinidad and Tobago in particular. And so I really grew up in an environment where, there were limitations, not only being an immigrant, but also being a Black male. There was always a lot of limitations ever since I was a child. I can remember even being in, I think it was like third grade, and this little boy looked over to me and told me that his dad told him that I'll never amount to much,
Wow.
And I remember that as a child. And so, I grew up, seeing my parents, they work really hard. And I have a lot of memories of that. But they were great parents. And so when I realized I was about to hit college age, I knew that, being an entrepreneur was the route that I wanted to take. I remember going into university and I think at first, honestly, I was thinking more the corporate route. To be quite honest, I never saw myself as being able to do anything on my own. But I remember I did an internship, and while I was doing the internship, there was this special event going on. It was a music and business seminar, conference that was happening, and I just remember seeing so many people that were self-made and entrepreneurs. And I think that freedom, I think really honestly at that moment, I knew that I was changing everything. And when I got off that internship, it was weird. It's like I went back and I was like, nope. And I started my first business in college with my roommate, and we started a promotions company, and we started doing that. And then, kind of evolved, and I started doing marketing and promotions for artists, for recording artists. I connected with a local entrepreneur and got exposed into that world a lot more, which was really great. And then that just expanded even more into real estate. I realized I met my wife. It's my girlfriend, and ended up becoming my wife. And I was like, I don't really like the entertainment world. I didn't like the world. I love artists, but man, I didn't like that world at all. And so, I decided, okay, I need to have a little more control. And then I got exposed into real estate. And, I think, through that whole process, I realized how many hurdles there were. I didn't have any connections. I didn't have any banking connections. My family sure didn't have any. And so I learned a lot. I made a lot of mistakes, and I learned a lot. But it really educated me on the limitations in the banking world. The hurdles that were there. It exposed me to, I was fortunate to meet a lot of influential people around the globe, in that process, just in being in the world and working really hard. I got to meet a lot of people that were kind enough to, kind of show me behind, behind the curtains a little bit. I got to understand that there really is a bias when it comes to financing. Like, it's not like there's people have there's a concept side of it of, prejudice or discrimination that happens, but then there's actual practices that are really based into fundamentals of how loans are created, how credit scores are derived. Like, I remember after the first recession, which I was fortunate, I say this now, I was fortunate to go through at a young age back in 2005, 2006, and seeing how, people that, had short sales and foreclosures, but maybe had a different background of mine, they were quickly, they either didn't have as much of a hit to their credit and to their ability to get financing, or B, was able to bounce back up at a much faster pace than I was, even though I had more history, more experience, more, fundamental, all those different things that I just realized it. So, kind of fast forwarding, I knew even at that point, it was like another pivot in my life, right? It was like, this is not enough. This is not going to get me to where I need to go. And I really started to research and search. And it was a tough mentally spot for me. And I think at that time I was able to connect with a cousin of mine, actually, who, to this day right now, he's more than a cousin. He's like my best friend, my mentor, my brother. I really look at him in that way. And, we spent a lot of time, really on the subject. It's kind of, we both were in this phase of like frustration, of what we were seeing. And we really started deep diving. And I mean, when I say deep diving, I mean, I'm not exaggerating. I mean, there were nights of not sleeping, of reading all day, of in the middle of work. Like I'm, just going through the history of economics, world governments, understanding, how the stock, how finance, how just really just it became an obsession in a way of just diving into so many different aspects of history. And, we started to put the pieces together in many ways, and, started to understand the regular system. And then I remember at one point I asked him, I said, have you heard of Bitcoin? This is probably now 2012 or so.
Yep.
And he was like, yeah. I remember. I remember it from some past, files and whatnot. And he's like, it kind of reminds me of like Napster, what the whole Napster case, right? And so we kind of tabled it and started, kind of going through it a little bit. I think we might have just picked up a few just for, kicks. And then kind of went back and once again, taking all the information and really still, I guess, in the regular world, right? The non, blockchain world, still doing that sort of thing. At that point, I was starting to get a grasp on building up, real estate and really building up investments and, started buying different things. And so that started moving forward. And he reached out to me again. He goes, hey, I think you really need to like focus back on this. And I said, what? He goes, remember when you asked me about Bitcoin and blockchain? I said, yeah. And it was almost like he was, it's like if you would have heard him at the time, it was almost like he was like, he sounded like someone that was buried under like a bunch of papers, right? Like he was just like, he was going so fast and explaining it, but he's not a technical person, which is the funniest thing. And so he's explaining to me and I'm just like, okay. And so, I mean, he really started like over like the next year or so, really started. It's probably like 2015, 2016 or so. You know,
Okay, this when you start first kind of the peak when things started getting kind of public. There was people.
not yet. It was like, so this is
Okay.
like 2015. This is like maybe 2 years before that,
Okay.
right? And so to kind of speed it up a little bit, yeah, we got into it and really started diving deep again into blockchain. And I remember, Bitcoin was a couple $100, right? I remember that. Coinbase was around, right?
Okay.
Coinbase was around, and it was a big learning process. So everybody that's now looking at crypto and blockchain, I mean, this is so much easier than when we were kind of getting involved. I mean, it was like really no holds bar. It was paper wallets and I mean, it was, but I mean, at the same time, we had the context of history. And so the concept of multiple currencies, all these things really weren't foreign concepts. It really wasn't foreign concepts. And so it made sense. It started making more and more sense. And so, we started dedicating a lot of time, again, just all into blockchain, reading every document that we could find, understanding all the different protocols. But even at the time, it still felt like it was disappointing in many ways at the time. It's like Bitcoin, I got Bitcoin, I understood Bitcoin, but as life-changing as it was, and it really was, the creation what Satoshi did was really life-changing. The fact that he was an immutable ledger, that was a game changer. Honestly, probably one of the greatest inventions, in our lifetime. There was still more. And I think, at that point, Ethereum came onto the picture, and I said, okay, this is good. And then it wasn't until, I would say, around 2017, when everything started going crazy, when I realized what Stellar was. And, at the time, when I was looking at Ethereum, they were talking about tokenizing of assets. That really sparked my excitement, sparked both of our excitement. And I remember my cousin at the time, even, he was talking, he was like, what, I think that stocks, real estate, everything's going to be on the blockchain. And I said, really? He goes, yeah. And then I remember looking at it and I said, but I don't think Ethereum can really handle this. Mm-hmm. Like literally, I remember saying, I don't think it, based on the way the blocks and it's too clunky. I don't think it can really handle this. And so we started really searching. And the craze of blockchain was going up that year. And it was frustrating, honestly, at the time, because it was like people were buying tokens that really made no sense. It had no value, in my opinion, and the wrong things were getting attention. And I remember coming across Stellar, but I was only looking at it from a cross-border payment system, because that's what they were advertising as, cross-border payments. And I said, let me go back to that. And I started reading about Jed and about his mission, and started looking at what was being built on it, and really got excited. And then I went to they had on their website, they had all their docs where they really started, and I read the entire thing, like every single page about it. And this was literally, I remember, like, honestly, it was like 3-4 o'clock one morning, and I called him and I said, this is it. He goes, what? He goes, no. I said, they got it. They cracked the code. They understand how to make this work. We literally debated about this for weeks, because at the time there was I think it was ZRX was kind of they're trying to make a layer 2 with tokenization and bringing assets on. There were a couple other side chains off of Ethereum that were trying to do this. But I really believe that Stellar got it. It wasn't just from not just their technology, but in the way that they set it up, their governance, and the way that they, really seem to, understand the real world. Because I felt as if a lot of projects didn't understand the world that we lived in. Like, you weren't just going to come in here and completely disrupt in a natural sense the whole financial system. Like it was not going to like they don't understand how the dollars and this, how this works, how governments and world leaders, how they build their power. And so Stellar really understood, they really created a way to merge it. And so once we kind of got onto that, and I was really excited about Stellar, I realized that still people weren't talking about it. There were other projects out there that they were hyping. I won't say any names, but there were a lot of the ones that I was able to. I was saying like these are either scams, straight out scams, or illusions, right? Sleight of hand illusions. And then I just started tweeting. I just started tweeting, and I remember having maybe one follower, and it started to grow from there.
Awesome. Well, it all starts with one follow. Look, cheers for such a thorough answer, and really interesting to hear your journey, from entrepreneur and still entrepreneur, but into this world. You touched on Stellar a bit then, and I think I probably know some of the answers, but it'd be great to talk through them and hear them. When you look at Stellar, and if you can expand on that a bit more, what was it that really excited you? And not at the bits and the bytes level, but in terms of the real world application of this, because it sounds to me like definitely your upbringing, what you experienced from, young and going through to now has probably some influence over that decision. I know as a business, why we look at Stellar as not just a good blockchain technically, but also as a business ethically and what they're trying to do. Can you just talk around some of those things that really attracted you and still do to Stellar and this kind of stuff they're doing?
So, I think, when I look at my journey through being an entrepreneur, right? It's to really try to get across, and change your life. Like I said, I really started from nothing, honestly. It comes down to cash flow, that's the one thing. If you're listening and you don't really have access, you're wondering, how do I become a millionaire, whatever that means, or whatever, financially stable, you're trying to find, it comes down to cash flow, right? It comes down to cash flow. That was the aha moment that I had when I was starting my journey. So, okay, I got to create cash flow. How do you create cash flow? The best way is a business. That's the best way. You start a business. I don't care what it is. Start a business, create cash flow. I don't care if you're selling, an item on Amazon or something. Create cash flow and try to create as many streams of it as you can. And so, in going through that process, like I said, I learned so many hurdles. And what I saw Stellar allowing is, like you said, from the bits and from the technology is great, but from a practical standpoint, what it does, it makes it really easy for almost anybody to create a wallet or to leverage the technology to trade commerce. And you got these anchor systems where, for instance, hey, if I'm selling, shea butter in Chicago and I'm working out of my house, that I could right now, connect with, somebody in Africa or Argentina, anywhere, and, trade back and forth. And so you have cash flow. The other thing that it answers is, okay, is how do you raise capital? When I was starting off, and let's say you wanted to get into real estate, real estate is probably one of the easiest, most leverageable things you can get into. But it still has a lot of hurdles, between your down payments. And I remember being in situations where I had sound ideas, like it worked, the numbers worked, that I couldn't find financing because I had to go through a gatekeeper. And so when you talk about the idea of tokenization that Stellar is providing, where you can buy fractions of a share of a stock, or you can go into precious metals through Stellar, or, let's say now if there's several projects that are trying to put this together where, let's say, you live in a community and you have a cash flowing property. Hey, you can tokenize it on Stellar, and you could open it up to other people that can help you to raise that capital a lot easier. You see like what Smartlands is doing. So, when I look at it from that perspective, the opportunity that it has, and I'll add this to it as well, is that, I really believe that, the economy should have been in a recession or depression a couple years ago. Because of all the funding and all the pumping and printing of dollars, we've allowed this illusion to go on, but it's not going to last. And we're in a world right now where jobs are lost and they're not going to be recovered. Everybody that I know realized in the last year that they can make more money with less people. Tons of business owners, less space. And so if you're an average person out there, you need to figure out a way to utilize your funds, whatever funds you have. You need to be able to leverage it as much as you can to invest it. And once again, that's for these assets, not just speculative assets in the true sense, but, stocks and, hard assets, real estate, gold. And I mean, you talk about like even like TFC, I mean, they're creating a whole economy on their token. You know what I mean? So there's so many different creative ways that you can utilize Stellar that we probably haven't even realized yet. But, being your own business is, I believe, is going to be so crucial in the next 10 years for people to survive. And so, from that aspect, is why I believe Stellar is so powerful and important.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think, to underline some of those points, I mean, we've been using Stellar within our platform since we founded 2-3 years ago. But my learning curve at technology level and, in the last few months, because of dealing with people like yourself and the business and the foundation, really understood a whole lot more. And things like the anchors. And, I get this notion from Stellar. I don't know if it's right. It'd be good to hear your reflection on it, really. But when I look at what Stellar are doing, I really feel like they're creating this technology, or they have this technology they almost want to kind of put into the background to facilitate all sorts of great real life businesses. And it's not really about Stellar, and you'll have people trading and people will understand that, but it's really about having this mechanism to fulfill their mission. And their strategy around anchors, I think, underpins that. It's about how can I be a small business in Mexico or a farmer in this part of the world, or someone in San Francisco or wherever, where I don't really need to understand Stellar. I just have technology that can solve problems for me outside of the traditional methods. Is that kind of how, is that a correct statement in terms of where Stellar's going in terms of their strategy to really branch out and, fulfill their mission as a business?
Absolutely. Because I mean, what people don't realize is that we use anchors right now, right? When you go onto Cash App, you're taking you're digitally transferring your money from your bank account into Cash App, who is custodial now of your funds, right? Your funds are in Cash App, right? And then you're sending it to your friend, once again, in which you're taking an anchored asset of your USD or whatever currency, you're sending it to your friend. It's an anchor system, but it's a crappy anchor. The current system, the current system that we use is crappy. PayPal and Venmo are owned by the same company. But if I have PayPal and I want to send it to you by Venmo, I can't just digitally send it to you. I'm going to have to either go through a whole new process and create another Venmo account, or and try to send it that way. Right. And so it's a real crappy system. Even various bank accounts in the United States, I can't just easily say, oh, okay, you're banking at such and such, let me send you money. So Stellar is saying, hey, look, we have recreated that same system on blockchain. We've improved the system. And so if Venmo, PayPal, everybody were to come onto this system, now if I have a Cash App and you have PayPal, or I have Cash App and you have Zelle, I can just simply send you the money digitally. The same way, with the way email works, right? It doesn't matter if you have Hotmail, they have AOL, this person has a US government email address. It doesn't matter. I can I can send them a document. You know what I mean? It's like, imagine if you had to literally log off of Gmail, log on, and then transfer everything onto Yahoo. Imagine what kind of, it makes, it sounds stupid, but we're doing that with money. And so yeah, you're absolutely right. They're recreating the world.
That's a great analogy. I never thought about it like that. That's a really, really, part of the problem with this whole space, or that the challenge is communicating it in ways like that where people just get it. That's a really great analogy of, if I had a Gmail account and now I've got to transfer a cost to a Yahoo account. So yeah, really good, really great analogy. And I think maybe it's a good segue in terms of, obviously where we are is the nonprofit sector predominantly, solving problems for nonprofits, having really, awesome conversations around innovation with this tech. And I know you've had some experience in the charity and the nonprofit sector, and it'd be great to touch on that and just explore what you see, outside of, you understand our business, what we're doing, but there's obvious opportunities for nonprofits when you're talking about, what you just talked about in terms of transferring funds to different places, getting money to where it's needed, disaster relief situations. Just touch on that bit. You've had some experience in the nonprofit sector, right?
Yes.
And over your career.
Yes. And so, man, the biggest concern. So, years ago, I got involved and wanted to, was thought about creating a nonprofit, and decided, well, there's so many nonprofits that already exist. Why not create an entity that can help other nonprofits do what they want to do? So that kind of got me into that whole thing, and I ended up becoming a chair of a nonprofit that dealt with at-risk children. The biggest thing, when I looked at it, and I was passionate about, okay, it's a great director, it's a great program, it's so much there. Okay, how do let's go out and raise as much capital as possible so we can fully, materialize this mission. As a stewardess, as a person, I'm like, okay, how do I, if I go to a company or I go to somebody and I say, hey, give me $100,000. I want to be able to show this person how it's being used, right?
Yeah.
Because there's so many nonprofits where they're not being used accurately. It's a scam, a lot of these. And I'm not gonna say, I won't say any names. A lot of these major nonprofits, really, it's a travesty. All this money comes in, very few dollars actually go to the resources of where they're supposed to take them. And the rest goes into parties and salaries and all those different things. And so, how do you address that? And so that was definitely a problem that I saw. And, I saw nonprofits where there was money that was stolen, and it's it happens all the time. I mean, or a lot of organizations, and especially even smaller ones, because they're really relying on the trust of another individual that says they are the treasurer of, of the nonprofit to do the right thing. And it opens up so many opportunities. So yeah, when you have a public ledger where you can trace and track and verify, it does two things. One, it helps to eliminate the scammers out there, because if we can make it a standard, right? Hey, if you're raising money, you need to use blockchain, right? You need to, because this is how we ensure, that the transparency and the integrity of the nonprofit. Okay, we create a standard of that, and I think that it's not even a matter of, I guess, of making it some sort of law, but if we get enough major nonprofits to all agree to this and they start doing it on their own, I think that if someone's giving money, they're going to want to see, is there that task, let's just say that task stamp on that nonprofit? If that task stamp is not there, I'm not touching it, right? I'm not touching it. And so we can get to that point, it does that. But then also, right, because there's a lot of nonprofits out there. Like I said, these are the small ones, the ones that they're not focused on marketing. They maybe aren't, the most well-connected to, get in front and do these big speeches. But let's say, for instance, we live in a world now where we have that task stamp, and I'm able to now to go out and I can see where the dollar is being used. And I can see that there's a place in Virginia, and it's a lady who's been helping at-risk children in her community. And I can see 90% of that money is going into that community. She's taking it, and I can see where she's using it day in, day out, day out. You know what? Now I got the opportunity to say, oh, that person is doing good. I want to, provide money. And I see not just nonprofits, but even churches and so on and so forth. I mean, gosh, I get excited thinking about it. That would be a game changer, man.
It's a huge area. It's not the interesting thing. It's not new. I mean, the notion of transparency is not new, and some of the technology is new. But I think what has changed from what I've seen in the last 10 years, I've been kind of in and around the nonprofit space for 10 years, is there were always, certain kind of, I like to call them kind of smart charities that wanted to do things a certain way, typically often smaller charities and social enterprises. But there is now a lot more public pressure, which is a good thing, to make sure. And the pressure's coming the other way now because you mentioned there, I mean, they're quite public. There's a number of really unfortunate, very high profile public cases where you've seen the misuse of funds and doubling up and all sorts of, just bad situations that really that tarnish the sector when you've got a lot of great people doing great work. So it really is exciting because you're solving these two problems in a dual sense, where you get money to the project faster, you track how it's used, great, in very simplistic terms. But I'm excited too, and I love you. Cheers for the task stamp. Good plug. Look, we'd certainly.
Well, it's a task podcast, right?
Very true. Yeah. Well, yeah, very true. We're in an interesting year now. Let's face it, we've been an interesting couple of years in many ways. But certainly in the sector we're in, that there is, a kind of, I wouldn't say a renewed interest, but it feels like a bit like it was a few years ago, but it's also different. Two questions in there, really. I mean, do you agree with that? Are we now at the kind of, hey, the real use cases are really taking hold, because if you look 3-4 years ago, there was this kind of excitement, and it seemed a lot more of the excitement was around Bitcoin and trading, and then there were too many ICOs and all this other stuff happened. Now you're seeing a lot more real life use cases, real business adoption. Is that something you see? And I suppose secondary and linked to that, do you think really just the reality of what we've dealt with for the last 12 years of being locked down and the importance of, what digital currencies can bring because of COVID, do you think that's having an effect, or it's just coincidental, or, so?
No. So I remember it was last year prior to COVID, right before COVID, I went to this presentation, and it was I think the Power Summit or something like that it was called. But the gentleman, and I can't remember his name on top of my head, but he was a speaker. He speaks around the country and was talking about the speed of technology and, just how this rapid pace of the way the whole economy in the world was going towards. And I remember at the end, somebody asked, he goes, well, because it was kind of dire. Basically, he got to this point where he was like, at a certain point, we're going to hit this plateau or this segment, this tipping point is what I'm looking for, where, the world is going to be all tech, and it's going to be hard. The gap between what humans are able to do to compete is going to be very hard. And I remember him saying that, there's no easy way around that. And this was pre-COVID, right? This was pre-COVID. Then the lockdown happened. And I mean, you saw the massive change, I've shared before, I have rental properties, right? And I remember for a long time, I could not get people to use hey, look, if you got a work order, use this, use this application. If you want to pay, use this application. And it was like pulling teeth. No one wanted to do it, right? Once COVID happened, I mean, it was amazing. I saw everybody at all different economic levels, they switched. Because everywhere they went, that was just the norm. It became the norm. Everywhere they went, they got used to not talking to people on the phone. They got used to emailing. And just like that, it transferred. And so I think, yeah, I mean, you kind of had, like I started off this evolution that really started in the 90s, right? It's when it really started picking up steam with the internet, and it just started to kind of evolve. And then as technology and capabilities started expanding, it started accelerating. Then you had blockchain, which, I mean, that was just a Pandora's box to talk about creativity. It really is amazing when you think about with people like, Jed and, Jesse Powell and Roger Ver and, Vitalik, what these artists in many ways, these geniuses in many ways were able to create, basically on their own.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing. I don't think they get enough credit for it, honestly. And then you had the pandemic. So yeah, I do believe that it's a combination of all these things that got us to this point. To answer to your first question, as far as utilities, absolutely. There's some great blockchains and protocols right now that have some great use case. I mean, you see it happening all over these, from this DeFi and the decentralized finance to data storage is a lot of some great projects doing that. To streaming, leveraging blockchain for streaming. But then you have Dogecoin.
You know what? It was written on my notes before. I was like, should we, do we bring up Dogecoin? Because but
it's hard not to.
You brought it up anyway,
it's hard
which
not
is great.
To. Yeah. And it's you bring up Dogecoin and it's like and so and then and so I think on one end you have this real technology, this real growth that's happening, but we still have a little bit of that ICO type fever between Dogecoin is it has that ICO fever that reminds me of 2017. You have
I was trying to find the quote that Musk. So I was just trying to find it there, but Musk made a comment again today, didn't he? He called himself.
Oh, I saw. Yeah.
What was it?
The Doge father.
That's right. I couldn't remember, but
I don't understand that.
I'd love to hear your theory.
I don't understand.
I'd listen to
my theory on it. Well,
go on. I'll let you go first.
I mean, I just, I don't get it. I don't get it. I mean, there's a couple ways to look at it. On one end, are they making a point, right? Are they making a point? I mean, because, here's one storyline that I kind of see evolve is you had this kind of like religion around Bitcoin, right? You had this religion around Bitcoin, and I mean, Bitcoin is a store of value, right? I mean, it doesn't really, there's not much that it can, I mean, they could have created smart contracts. They could have done a lot of things, but they just didn't, right? That's why you had all these forks. They just couldn't move together. There's all these different ideas. So Bitcoin is a great piece of technology and it's a store of value, but there's like this religion behind it. And so when, so it's kind of like, well, when it took Elon and Mark Cuban talking about it, all of a sudden it was like the bottom of the bottom crypto. It's now number 6 or 7. And so it's like this, it's almost like an experiment. And it's interesting, before he really started, on this Dogecoin thing, Elon said the most entertaining outcome is usually the best outcome. He started to leave these little droplets of this, right? Of this experiment that he was kind of hinting towards. And so a part of me thinks that maybe that's part of it. And in that process, what I've seen happen is a lot of institutions that were really bullish on Bitcoin, just Bitcoin, they started to evolve their discussion into utility. Because then the question is, okay, well, what's the difference?
Yeah.
Right? What's the difference between one token to another token? Is it just belief? Is it just, you know what I mean? Okay, if someone just believes in it, then it works, right? It's different when we get into utility, because now it's a little more, now we can compare apples to apples. What does this thing do? Okay, based on what it does, it creates value in the token because of demand and usage of it, right? It's a little different conversation. So I've seen that happen. But I think my fear, though, is that it's dangerous because you can lose a lot of money really fast in crypto.
Yeah.
And I think that the danger is that when it's all about creating habits, right? It's, Warren Buffett, he missed out on a lot of investments. He missed out on Apple. I mean, they say Steve Jobs sat down with him. They said Bill Gates sat down with him. They said Bezos sat down with him, and he passed on all of those, but he's still a billionaire, right? Why? Because he had good habits. He had a discipline, and he stuck to his discipline, and it worked. And I believe in that philosophy, even with real estate. I know a lot of people over the years that, as I was kind of, trotting along, they came up and they splashed and they hit it out the park, and then they were bankrupt. Splash, hit it out the park, and then bankrupt. And I just like, right? And you see with lotto winners, right? You see lotto winners, they win all this money, they go broke. And so I think that what he's doing, and he, what I hope he doesn't realize, right, is that he's training people in a false habit. Because I'm seeing people out there who got lucky. They put, this one guy, there's an article I read with this guy, he took $100,000 from his, I think it's 401k, cashed it out. Then he leveraged it to the max on Binance or whatever. So he leveraged it to the max, but he was lucky and he caught it and it ran to the top.
I saw this one. Yeah.
But there's so many other stories of people who did that and failed. And so once you have the habit of doing it on Dogecoin, now your belief is I could do it on anything. So you take your profits, you move it to, and ladies and gentlemen, you can lose a lot of money fast in blockchain. You can lose a lot of money fast in seconds. So yeah, I think it's dangerous what he's doing in many ways. And it's going to be interesting to see how that story ends.
Yeah, it will be. I heard the same stuff that you heard. And maybe, who knows? I'm certainly not in the right circles to know what Elon Musk is thinking, but it does seem pretty strange, some of the stuff he's doing. I mean, he made a comment saying wouldn't it be ironic if the one coin that was, the one coin that was launched as a joke becomes, one of the most kind of used one, which but that in itself is a dangerous path in terms of, like you said, I mean, promoting in that way, but it could be that kind of crazy. That's what he's doing. But anyway, I mean, at least, I think outside of that, there's all sorts of other stuff going on and great application, and almost kind of coming to the end, but it'd be great. I didn't, this hadn't been a question, but listening to you and knowing some of our audience and actually knowing where the world's at today, it'd be great just to end on a kind of note of advice on it, really. And, people starting businesses coming into this space, so people, there are way more people now, as you would know, having to choose entrepreneurship. I mean, you chose entrepreneurship, it was something natural to you. You wouldn't, I don't think, have gone anywhere else. That there's an interesting thing happening in the world, and touching on your point of people going out of work. I mean, I think we're going to see a time over the next, I don't know how long it's going to go for, but 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years where there's almost a forced entrepreneurship. More and more people are going to have to go out there and generate their own opportunities. And, advice that you would give to people stepping out for the first time to do that, not necessarily in this space, but just in general, it'd be great to get your slant on that as a kind of seasoned entrepreneur.
I would definitely encourage, everybody listening to really consider it. Advice that I would say is start small, lead with revenue, and what I mean by that is to, don't go out and just start spending money. And I see a lot of people when they start businesses, they spend so much on flyers and logos and all these different things that really don't have an effect. Focus on your product. The best thing that you can do is sell your product. That's it. If you find a good product, I don't care what it is. It could be, you make a candle. Let's say you're at home and you make candles. Make the best candle that you can possibly make. Work hard on that. Make the best candle you can make, and then let somebody, sell it to one person. Let them smell it. When they smell it and they say, "Oh my gosh, this is the best candle," that is your best advertisement right there. Focus on that. And so So yeah, I would say lead with revenue, and and work really hard. Really, and understand that it doesn't necessarily mean you have to quit your job. If you're doing what you like, you're doing what you enjoy. It doesn't, but I absolutely encourage everybody, even if you have a job, to try to practice that. Practice starting your own business, start something small. See what it feels like to generate your own income, and I guarantee you, it will change your life.
Awesome, Sam. Yeah, great advice. Appreciate it. I know other people will definitely appreciate that and take it on board. So, look, it's been great having you on. I mean, the work you do in the space, we need more people like you. I think it's great what you do. I mean, I think we said this off call. I speak to people all the time who are trying to learn about this sector. You can read the newspapers every day, but there is a gap. The job you do in terms of really pushing out the real messages of what's being done with blockchain, in your case with Stellar. Really appreciate the work you do and keep doing it. So, I mean, in terms of sharing some of that, where can people learn about you, find out more, follow your work online? Where should people find Sam?
So I'm on Twitter. That's one place, at Sam Connor, SAMCONNER 1, at Sam Connor 1 ONE. And then you can also join our Discord. And if you go to stellarglobal.chat, that's where we are, Stellar Global. What we're building over there with people from all over the world. Right now, we currently have a Korea channel, Turkey channel, Caribbean channel, Austria. We have Ireland, and I want to say we have a European channel right now as well. What we're trying to build is a community where we're able to teach more about how to turn this blockchain that Stellar has into an opportunity to start your own business, to expand your own business. And so we're creating these networks so that way people can do it. As a matter of fact, I can plug March 5th in our Discord at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. I've got John Moss from the Uhuru wallet there out in South Africa, or actually East Africa. And I've also got Ivan from Argentina. They have an app called Anclap. They're both anchors, right? So they're both anchors, Argentina peso, and over on Anclap. And they're going to be in Discord discussing what it's like to be an anchor. How do they become an anchor, which is really cool. I mean, the banking sector is where all the money's at. And so with Stellar, you can have a piece of that. You can get involved now, and help out in this world. And so I think the anchor system is a massively underrated opportunity that Stellar is providing. You have the opportunity to work to help bring assets onto the blockchain, onto the new world. And so I think it's a huge opportunity. And so we got 2 anchors that are going to be on to discuss that. And it's going to be a clubhouse style event. And so you can hear the discussion, you can raise your hand, ask a question, and learn more. So we hope to do more of that as well. So shout out to everybody. Amir, my good buddy out there at Turkey, who's been like my go-to guy, Dorian as well. And Ferg and everybody else, all this that have been part of the team to really help make this a reality.
Awesome. Cheers. I will leave all of those notes in the podcast notes when I publish it. And
thank you.
Based on what you just said, I'll probably, I'll find a decent link to, resources on what anchors are and stuff, just for people watching who want to kind of learn more. And if you've got a suggested one, let me know. Otherwise, I'll just grab it from the Stellar website. So, hey man, it's been
Stellar.org, man. Stellar.org. Great website. A lot of great information.
Awesome, Sam. Look, brilliant having you on. Appreciate your time, and we shall keep talking more as the months and years roll on. So
Sounds good. Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure. I appreciate it.
Cheers.